Okay, calling to order the Chaska Parks and Recreation Board meeting for October 12th, 2020. Roll call, Mary.
Hey, Chair David Roan.
Here.
Vice Chair Jason Branch.
Here.
Ernesto Ruiz Gutierrez. Joshua Ives. David Downs.
Here.
Matt Uterman.
Here.
Elizabeth Wiving.
Here.
Georgianne Keyport.
Here.
Zach Saressig.
Here.
Did you hit Georgianne?
Yep.
Oh, okay. All right. So with that, we move on to item number 3, which is to adopt the agenda for tonight's meeting. And I'll entertain a motion to adopt the meeting.
So moved.
All right. Uterman, second.
Second.
With Downs, any discussion, any changes amended for tonight's agenda? All right, hearing none, I'm going to go ahead and go through a roll call on this to get approval for tonight's agenda with Commissioner Weinveen. Yay or nay?
Yay.
Okay, Commissioner Branch.
Yay.
Downs. Yay. Commissioner Uterman. Commissioner Keyport.
Yay.
Yay.
And I approve as well. And so we have adopted the agenda for this evening. And so with that, we move on to item number 4, which is the visitor presentation. And seeing no one out in the audience here today, I'm going to go ahead and close out the visitor presentation here at 7:02 and move on to item number 3, which is to approve the previous meeting minutes from last month. And I'll go ahead and tap on those right now to take a peek at them, but assuming everybody's had a chance to review the minutes from last month's meeting on September 15th, does anyone have, well, actually, I guess you probably should look to get a motion to approve those meeting minutes.
So.
All right, Uterman, I need a second.
Second.
All right, I think that was Weinveen.
Keyport.
It was Keyport.
Is that Keyport?
That was Keyport.
Yeah.
All right, Georgianne, you're on the board. All right, so any discussion, any changes, corrections to the meeting minutes from back on September 15th last month? All right, hearing none, we're going to go through the same drill here. And I do not believe that Commissioner Ives is on, but Josh, if you're on there, do you want to approve these? All right, I don't think he's with us. So Commissioner Weinveen, yay or nay?
Yay.
Commissioner Branch?
Yay.
Commissioner Downs? Yay. Commissioner Uterman?
Yay.
Commissioner Keyport?
Yay.
Commissioner Saressig?
Yay.
And Commissioner Roan, yes. All right, and so we do officially approve of the meeting minutes from last month's meeting. So that moves us on to item number 6, which is to receive the council and planning meeting minutes. And we're going to start with 6A, which is we've got the council minutes from August 17th. And all we have to do is receive. There's no motion required with these. However, with that, was there anything in the council minutes from August 17th that anyone would like to discuss?
I've got a question on it.
Sure.
One of the things they're talking about in the, I believe it was these minutes, was there's a new development that's going in just south of Pioneer. And they're talking about a possible park in there. I assume it would be a developer's park that would go in, and whether they needed it. And I think they called it a tot lot.
Okay.
I don't know if you were familiar with this, but there was quite a bit of discussion in it. And I was wondering if you got involved in those discussions, because they were talking about it was from that where that development is planned, it would be a mile for the kids to walk to the nearest park. and they thought there needed to be something there, but the developers were saying that, you know, it's not going to be the type of neighborhood where there's going to be an awful lot of kids. And I would think that would be something that you may want to get into and weigh into it. It sounds like something that, you know, with the plans we had before, that you were going to have a park within so much distance of each community or each dwelling. It sounded it would be right up your alley to get involved in that.
Yeah, do you recall the name of the development?
I don't
For it right
can
now.
Chance?
at the minutes and pick it out pretty quickly.
Got it in here. I just want to find it.
Familiar with this as well. And so do you know exactly where the development was going to, you say off of Pioneer?
Yeah, you know where it's Clover Ridge area?
Yeah, okay.
It's just south of Pioneer towards Clover Ridge. I live on Isabel Parkway, Bella Vista community.
Okay.
You come out of our street and they were talking about potentially the headlights of our cars coming out of there shining into the homes across the street. So it's right there that they're talking about the development.
It wouldn't be too far from like where Walden Park is now.
Sure.
But
Yeah, so
I'm familiar with
Vista.
that.
I think in the minutes they talk about using Kelzer Park for those people that live in that area instead of having an additional park, but I'm not sure where that is in relative to the new neighborhood.
Now, with any new development, there's always designated park area.
Well, that's why I was kind of confused in the thing. I didn't go back and look at the video.
Yeah, so typically,
Have a development without any kind of percentage of park, unless there was a buyout.
yeah, so typically what they look at is if we determine on our end that there's not necessarily a need within that particular development because there already is a nearby park within our half a mile, you know, and most of those we've identified on our comprehensive plan. The developer then, in lieu of land, then pays park dedication fees. But maybe in this instance, they were still exploring the idea of incorporating some sort of tot lot within their development. So I'll loop back with our planning department and get a little more information on that to share.
I think it starts on page 11 from our packet from tonight. For the minutes from the council meeting where they talk about it specifically.
All right, but regardless, that's going to run back through this commission before anything is decided. So, okay, well, Commissioner Downs, thank you for bringing that up. Were there any other items from the August 17th council minutes that anyone wanted to comment on? All right, so moving on to item 6B, and that is going to be the Planning Commission minutes from August 12th. Were there any items within those meeting minutes that anyone wanted to comment on? All right, hearing none, we're going to go ahead and receive those minutes there for item number 6, which moves us on to item number 7, which is our action items. And we're going to start off here with item 7A, which is the Lake Grace trail recommendation.
All right.
And all right, so Director Grange is going to present on this.
Great. Thanks, Chair and Commissioners. Welcome to October. Hope everybody's been enjoying the beautiful fall weather we've been having. So what I'm going to do first, just to provide a little more context, I'm just going to quick share my screen and pull up the map for any of those viewers that might be out there watching this video live on our YouTube channel or look at the recording afterwards, just so they know where we're talking about here. Let's see if everybody can.
Let me just interject back to the other topic just real shortly. It's the August 17th minutes. It's page 4 of 9. It's page 13 to 32 in our packet, and it's just in the middle of the page. You can take a look, and that's where it's discussed, and there's several comments about the thing.
Great,
So.
thank you. Is everybody seeing the map?
See your screen.
Let's see here. Try this again. There we go. Is that? There we go.
There we go.
Yep.
All right. So this is a trail improvement project that we're looking at. That's essentially along the southeastern corner of Lake Grace here. And this was a project that I had shared with the park board back in August with a lot of the detail. But essentially, this is a trail improvement project in which we're looking at the primary goal of connecting it to the underpass that was installed under Highway 41 a couple of years ago. That was part of that Highway 41 improvement project. So currently there's an underpass that takes users from the west or the east side of Highway 41 and over to the west side, but it really requires a bridge installation. If I can zoom in here, there's some backwater here in which we need a bridge in order to get people from the trail down here across the bridge and then into this underpass, which isn't quite shown here on this Google map yet. So I just wanted to pull that up to again remind everybody where we're talking about in terms of this trail improvement project. So with that, I'm going to go back to my screen here. So as I mentioned back in August, I brought this forward as a project the city was looking at, and really to reiterate, primary goal is to create that connection from the existing trail that's there on over to that underpass, which is really an opportunity for us to create a much safer pathway for people to get across Highway 41 versus having to go up to the Pioneer Trail and 41 intersection and navigate that stoplight. So some other components that we're looking at, or that we were looking at with this project, was some pretty significant tree removal. We're going to have to do some repairs and or resurfacing of the existing trail that's there. And then initially staff had talked with the residents that live right along the trail about a year ago and gathered their feedback. And the thought was for us to try to create as much separation as possible, to minimize the impact for those residents living along the trail with more users. But there was also the desire of widening the trail, which would make it possible for our park maintenance staff to be able to maintain it in the winter. So they need a minimum of an 8-foot wide trail to do that. And in order to get to that 8-foot width, it was going to require us to have to lower the elevation of the current trail that exists there, because there's a pretty decent drop off that exists from the edge of the trail over to the lake. And so there really isn't an easy way to widen the trail in some of those spots. So that was the thought of lowering the trail as well. Well, and then to do that, we would then need to install some retaining walls and some decorative fence on top of that. And so that was sort of the grandiose plan to accomplish, everything on the wish list. But I had come back and at our last meeting in September and said we had gotten some estimates as to what it would cost us to do all of that work. And it came back such that we just weren't comfortable as staff bringing that forward to the city council. And talking with our city administration, we were given the direction to keep this project closer to the $500,000 range. And so with that, had some additional conversations with our Public Works Director, Brian Jung, and how we could accomplish that. And, we feel that we can do that. We can do all of that work other than widening the trail and, and lowering the elevation and whatnot. But we can still accomplish the primary goals of installing the bridge, removing the significant trees that makes it more passable and much better sight lines going through there. There's some retaining walls in there that were city built that are going to get removed, which will create just more openings and visibility as well. And then also the doing a trail resurfacing in the end. And then the other thing that we're going to need to consider as well would be installation of some fencing for safety reasons between the trail and the lakeside there. And one of the ways we're able to keep some of that cost down is the city, and ultimately Brian Jung and the Public Works Department will act as the general contractor for this project. And so we would go out and seek bids to perform, to contract with other entities to perform the work. And then there's some of the work that we'll self-perform as well to save some costs. So this obviously is a little bit of a change in the scope of what was originally presented. And so we wanted to make sure we had the opportunity to go back and visit with the residents that live in that neighborhood. So we held a neighborhood meeting last week, Thursday, to review this project with everybody. And so at that meeting, Brian Jung, along with his assistant, Scott Selkin, and Mary and I were in attendance. And then we also had a few park board members that attended, and Dave Rohn, Dave Downs, and then Elizabeth Wybing as well. So at that meeting, Brian Jung did a really good job explaining all of the details that would go into this project. And fielded several questions that people had. And so, I think the main takeaways that I would share with you tonight regarding that neighborhood meeting is, number one, I thought we had a really good turnout. I think there was probably 30 to 40 people that came out that evening. Two, I really didn't get a sense that anybody that was there disapproved of the project. I think everybody was in favor of this project and generally excited about making this connection to the underpass. Generally, I got the sense that the residents that lived in the townhomes, whose current patios are, right up against the trail, I think they generally were okay with the trail staying at a 6-foot width. I think maybe they were possibly having some more questions or reservations about what it might look like if we did do a retaining wall and decorative fencing and all that. So for now, I think they were happy with sort of rebuilding the trail as is. And then I think the takeaway as far as the only concern was many of the residents had expressed not wanting to put up fencing, if we didn't have to. And so I think we heard that feedback, and even Brian agreed that, it's not our desire to put up fencing either, but for safety reasons, we would be reaching out to the League of Minnesota Cities from a liability perspective to see if we're required to put up fencing, but if we don't have to, we wouldn't. And one of the residents even suggested some other ideas about, whether or not we could even build some sort of a retaining wall and put in some shrubs or some things like that. And so I think when we get to some of those points, we would have those conversations with the residents in conjunction with whatever feedback we get from the League of Minnesota City to work that out with them. I don't know, did any of the other park board members that were in attendance have any other comments or observations from what you saw?
Points that, I was going to offer if you didn't. So, I think that the feedback that we got from the residents there seemed to be pretty well received by, Brian in Public Works as possibilities. And so, whatever I think is ultimately decided as far as painting in those details can be ongoing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought Brian did a really good job. He impresses me every time I get around him. He just does a fine job. And the one thing that I thought was interesting too is they were talking about taking out that great big cottonwood tree. And with all the problems we had taking out trees here in Fireman's Park, I thought that was going to be an issue. And the people that lived next to it said, no, we want it gone. So that was a real plus.
Do you have a position on that cottonwood, Zach?
Oh, it's, I could, as soon as you brought it up, I thought, I think they want it gone.
Yeah, they were all ready to come down with their own chainsaws.
I think it doesn't surprise me that I feel, I'm a little ashamed that I wasn't at that meeting, but it doesn't surprise me that most of the residents were in favor of it. Everyone just wants that thing to get connected. The idea of being able to take the west side of the trails, connecting it to the east side without having to cross 41. And I just think everyone's just excited to see it happening. So if it means scaling it down a little bit and cutting back on some of the bling, great.
Yeah.
Bring it.
Yeah, and there was one resident that came up to Brian and I afterwards and, mentioned that she's not one of the homeowners that lives right on the trail, but does live in the area and expressed to us, how favorable she is of this improvement project and just the notion of her kids being able to go to school and getting there in a much more safer manner was a huge benefit to her. So that was good.
All right. Well, so with that, I'm going to go ahead. I want to open this up to everybody that's here on Zoom so that if you guys have comments, feel free to speak up now.
I just had a question. I know you invest heavily in community input and involvement. It hasn't always been the case, but being proactive in the neighborhood response and whatnot. Is there a best practice for having maybe like a community champion? Because I know I've seen these projects and you get to shovel goes into the ground and then you get 3 or 4 residents that didn't hear about it or didn't know about this or didn't know about that. And then it has a propensity to slow it down and maybe we didn't get that piece of feedback or whatever. Is there a best practice of having one of those 30 people step forward as the champion that's more or less the liaison to that immediate community? If you had any thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's a good question. You mean sort of rallying the rest of the residents to come in attendance?
Yeah, or at least make sure that there's no stone unturned. We just came from Scouts and there's a guy that lives up in Moore's Hammers and these are the conversations you're supposed to have. And it was like, well, whatever happened to that park? It was supposed to be bigger and there were supposed to be soccer fields. And it's like, okay, there's 200 or 300 residents there. There's 10 or 15 that are very active up front. And there's always a handful that trickle later. Not saying their input isn't valuable, but it'd be more valuable up front. And it might be even better to have somebody in the active 15 be that proactive, hey, this is going on. I know you've played that informal role in your neighborhood and let people know it's coming. And it feels like there's a lot of momentum there, but there's a good chance there's going to be a straggler that didn't hear about that meeting, couldn't attend that meeting. I didn't know if it would make the process easier if we had one person that was identified to be kind of like the local champion that might not even be affiliated with the board, that can field those questions or proactively reach out to kind of mitigate the downturn if there is one.
Yeah. No, I think it's a good idea, or even,
Suggestion for sure, because I think we've seen over the years that sometimes you get a project to the 11th hour and then some dissent comes out of nowhere that, despite the fact that you'd had all of your neighborhood meetings and what have you, that suddenly there's this groundswell out of nowhere where they're against it, like I'm in poison the well.
Yep. Well, there's the other piece of it too, where there's a level of ownership. Somebody that's going door to door and putting flyers on the door saying, this is great, I'm championing it. Is there any other feedback that you have? Because I get your point. Yeah, the 11 o'clock hour, it's that dissenting.
I think
It's the other side to say, maybe there's somebody that's got a really good idea that came from a different community or that's been there, lived here a long while, that has a better way to do it.
Right, obviously you want to hear that as well.
I think even just sort of writing on that, we can contact the Jonathan Association. They've got newsletters, they've got lots of channels of communication with everybody that lives over on that west side of 41. And, the schools, look at the Jonathan, entire neighborhood. We've got that multiple schools right within a half-mile radius there, that even, connecting with the PTOs or administrations at each of the schools as well. I think an opportunity just to get the information out. I know the residents that I talked to about this, just in my immediate neighborhood, two of the families right away said about safety, about kids getting to school, similar to what Marshall just said, somebody approaching both he and Brian after the meeting, that there's probably a good opportunity to connect with all those groups, and in addition to finding a champion.
One of the things too is that we need to have some kind of process to keep the people informed as how this goes along, and how do we do that? It's nice that we have these meetings and we have our minutes of the meeting, but realistically, how many people watch this and how many people read the minutes? So what's our communication plan to say, okay, we have had this meeting, these are the results of the meeting. Okay, it went to the park board and we all agreed that this is great, we should go forward with it. But we've got these other issues that we need to tweak in that along the way, and something that publishes out to the community that says, this is an active project, this is where we are, this is where we're going on the thing, and solicit comments through something like that. Because we're not going to reach them, like you said. We certainly don't have the whole community there at these meetings. There was a representative from Jonathan there. I believe he was the head of the homeowners association. So he should be able to be communicating some of this through his things. But if we have some systematic communication process, I think it would be an improvement for us.
Chanhassen does a nice job when you're driving through Chanhassen, and you've got the big purple sign with the leaf that says proposed development. So nobody's really surprised when there's a development after that sign's been up there for 6 months or whatever. And I can speak to it personally, that communication 20 years ago in Chaska was put it in the Herald and everybody knows, and your connection to different places, different areas. The Chaska Herald might be 15 to 20% of the community. There's social media, there's other stuff. But two things, right, to your point about being defensive, I guess, we want to make sure that everybody doesn't come at the 11 o'clock hour, but also proactive. And I think you've done a great job. The fact there was 30 people there, it's a project everybody wants. This is the fun, sexy one. It's going to connect. Everything's going to be great. But there's also this could be the blueprint for projects that might not have that overwhelming support that we need to do. And how do we get into there? I just think that having a neighborhood champion within that immediate area that can kind of be our ears, and maybe that's a path for them to be part of the park board, and a path for them to get more involved in our community because of that one project that happens to be in their backyard.
I think it's a great suggestion. I also think that just the Chaska Facebook site communicates and reaches a lot more people.
There's a lot of neighborhood Facebook sites.
Yeah, well, we've got one, Park Ridge. Yeah, so I mean, it is. I mean, and then people, they communicate effectively through those. So, I think we are a lot further down the field than we used to be, but we still need to think about these things. And the idea of maybe making that part of a standard practice for this commission, so that when we do have these projects that take place in little sites around our city, that we do have some boots on the ground, you know, where people are going to be, we know that people are going to be informed. So I think it's a good idea. Matt, appreciate you bringing that up.
Not
Yeah.
to backtrack, but I just want something to be clear. Because as everyone mentioned, as the project moves along, the budget changes. Some of what was said was going to be there in the beginning isn't going to be the way it is now. And everyone was mentioning this will be great for kids walking to school. So I think what I understood was the trail wouldn't be maintained during the winter months just due to difficulty getting equipment back in that area during the winter time. So I just wanted to be clear that that might not be a viable option during the snowy winter months for kids safely getting to school. I think before maybe that everyone was under the assumption that it would be maintained in the winter times, and it will not be.
Between either the City of Chaska or Jonathan Association, nobody could maintain that section? Is that what you heard, Elizabeth, at the meeting, or Marshall?
Well,
Yeah.
To Elizabeth's point, you know, with a 6 foot wide trail, you know, that was one of the trade-offs in terms of the city's capability to be able to maintain it, because they have 8 foot wide plows on their trucks. But it is my understanding in a conversation I had today that, you know, we could likely work with Jonathan Association. I know that many of their trails are 6 foot wide, and I think they contract services out to have some of their trails plowed. So I think that could be a likely option with us to work with Jonathan Association and see what that might look like to utilize.
On the other side of 41, where the tunnel hooks up, are they maintained in the wintertime? So they are plowed. So if the kids can get to the tunnel, they're home free to get to the schools.
The school.
Zip line.
I mean, there is only was it a 15 to 20% trails that actually get maintained
Throughout the entire city system.
entire city.
Yep. And
So-
even the ones that don't get maintained still get used,
Right, yeah, you're kind of,
you know, but
in your snowshoes, you know, to get through some of those. But, you know, that's not to say, as you say, that maybe if this is a trail that's going to become somewhat of a thoroughfare for people that want to be able to get their kids to school on this trail, then, you know, you can rise up and maybe through, you know, the Jonathan Association or the City of Chaska, that, you know, the effort can be made to get that trail plowed.
Yep. Because I think, you know, the contractor they're utilizing obviously has the equipment to plow this smaller width trails, because they're already doing that.
How do the kids get to school now? Is that neighborhood bused, I would assume?
Yep.
So in the dead of winter, they're still going to be bused. So,
Not everybody buses, though. You can do bus or,
sorry?
not everybody buses, though. But yeah, you can. Yep, bus rolls through there every morning.
So, but it's, you know, it's good that Commissioner Weinbeam brings up the point, you know, that there is a little bit of a trade-off that, you know, people need to understand up front.
Yep.
You can find a benevolent organization that wants to volunteer to maintain it in the wintertime.
Somebody a snowblower.
My neighbor Brad retired last year. I could see him be like, "Hey, I got to get the kids to school," and I could see him being out there at 5 a.m, you know, paving a path, so to speak.
All right, so I guess any other comments or questions related to the Lake Grace Trail recommendation?
So is the next step for you to take the plans to the city council?
Yep. So what'll happen is tonight, we'll seek your recommendation for us to take this to city council for them to authorize staff to go to bid. So that would go to their meeting next week. And should the city council approve it at that meeting, we would then prepare those bids to go out. Typically that's about a month-long process. And then the hope would be for the tree removal to occur yet this fall, early winter. The bridge will take some lead time. I think Brian said 8 to 10 weeks for them to fabricate that. So the earliest we would be looking at the bridge installation would probably be late January, early February. And so that I think the contractor will just need to make that determination based on the conditions and whatnot, if that's an ideal time to install it. But it could be installed anytime thereafter. And then we would come back in the spring and do the trail overlay and then any necessary fence installation and some of that other minor landscaping. So that'd be the timeline, and I think it should be mentioned too, this is sort of value engineering this project to get it to, a budget that we're comfortable with, and achieve the primary goal of making this connection. And then from there, I think we gotta, evaluate and take in feedback over time. And, maybe we do determine that it does need to be wider. But I think that would have to be another conversation and another process, almost like another project for the city to consider at a later time.
So are we looking for a motion now?
I think we are. I'm just kind of trying to draft something up. This is the days where we wish we had Nick Mason with us, but I've got some wording here together that I could put out there that maybe we could go ahead and get approval on. And so what I've got here is that what we'd like to do is send to the city council to approve the Lake Grace Trail proposal to move forward on the project with, ongoing bids and budgeting and details to be ironed out between the city and the community. How does that sound?
I'm not fond of it.
All right, well, yeah, by all means, make improvements as you wish.
I would leave out the last sentence that you had there, that just, the park board approves the project as outlined at this point for a phased program, and recommend that it go before city council for further approval, and then let the process take place.
I think in there too, you just want to mention that you're recommending that city council authorizes staff to go to bid.
All right, sure.
For the trail improvement projects needed.
We want more than to go for bids though, right? We want to start with the trees and, do that kind of stuff as well. It's not just the bid process. Or are you saying?
Well, trees will be part of the bid. So we'll work with, we'll send out to a couple tree contractors the project and then get bids on that.
I got it.
Yep. So they're all kind of separate bids, one to tree contractors, another one for the bridge fabrication. So.
And the stuff that the city is going to do itself, right?
Yep.
Just for my clarification, our city can't drop a cottonwood tree? That's always contracted?
Yeah, the one of this size is going to require a crane. Yeah.
The impression that it was the city crane that was going to be used in that. Doesn't the city have the big crane that they were talking about at that meeting?
I don't think so.
I heard beavers. There's 8 beavers.
I
Yeah.
don't think so.
No,
Yep.
I think I heard Brian say that they were gonna bid for the
Yep.
tree removal.
Yep.
If we don't have a machine to plow a 6-foot wide sidewalk, we probably don't have a crane.
Yeah, big crane. That crane. All right, so as I look at try and rework this without embarrassing myself further, what we're going to be looking to ask the city council to do is to authorize staff to move forward with the Lake Grace Trail project. Want to add the rest of the words?
And authorize staff to go to bid,
By staff to
go out to bid.
select or to pursue bids for the contract or bids for the.
And
Authorize the.
they're going to solicit bids for the various components of the project. All right, does that work for everybody? All right, so those are the words we got. Do we have a motion? We got from Uderman. Do we have a second?
Second.
Jurassic, do we, any further discussion on this? All right, let's go through the roll call again. I do not believe that Josh is with us, but I'm going to go ahead and ask for him anyway. Commissioner Ives. All right, Commissioner Weinveen, yay or nay?
Yay.
Commissioner Branch.
Yay.
Commissioner Downs.
Yes.
Commissioner Uderman.
Yay.
Commissioner Keyport.
Yay.
Commissioner Saresic.
Yay.
And Commissioner Roan, I say yay as well. And so with that, motion carries and we can move on. All right, excellent. So good discussion there. That takes us to action item 7B, which is a discussion to move the park board meetings onto the second Tuesday of each month at 7 o'clock rather than the Mondays. And so, Director, do you want to kind of comment on this before we have a discussion?
Yeah, so this really just came about really as an idea that stemmed from a email we received from our city clerk that went to all the staff liaisons to commissions asking whether or not there were any changes to our schedule next year. And it dawned on me that typically every year it seems like we have 1 or 2 conflicts a year with our Monday date just because of holidays. And so then if the city council doesn't meet on that first Monday, they then bump to the second Tuesday, which would be the night that we typically meet. It really hasn't been an issue to reschedule those, but I just thought if there's an opportunity to switch it and avoid it, why not at least ask the question? I did run it by our city administrator to get his thoughts, and his only suggestion was to, look at whether or not there's an ordinance established on it. And so I did look up the ordinance, and it only specifies that we're to meet once a month. It didn't give a specific day that we need to meet. So there is the ability for us to make this switch. And, I think out of courtesy, we just have that discussion and make a recommendation to city council. So it's going to them, so they're aware that we'd be making this move to the second Tuesday of every month rather than the second Monday. So with that, I'll just open it up to you guys for discussion. If it generally makes sense to you, if it works. The other thought going into this is so that we would be able to communicate it in the application process for people interested in serving on the park board next year, so that they're mindful that it'd be on Tuesday nights as they're considering that.
All right, so with that, I guess I'll open it up to anyone here on the commission that has anything they'd like to say about this? Is there anybody, I guess, in particular that finds maybe Tuesday would be unworkable for them or has a reason to believe that that would be unworkable for future boards?
I just have a question. When you're looking to start this, would it be in after the new year or at
Correct.
the next meeting? Okay.
We look at starting January of 2021.
Okay.
But to Dave's point, I think this is something that probably shouldn't be passed by majority. I think if there's one person that's not going to be able to make it fit, we shouldn't do it, you know,
Yep.
of all the members. So it may be just one and done, you know. So.
Yeah, is there anybody with a deal breaker out there that thinks that Tuesday just can't work? I'm seeing a lot of people using the shaking head no sign.
Just had a quick thought is, you know, Vincent's been valuable, his inputs. If we have a student representative, is there anything that would impact their ability to come on a Tuesday versus a Monday? And I know that he's had a lot of conflicts from a swimming standpoint and otherwise. I just didn't know if there was, I know sometimes church night is Wednesday night, so that would preclude a lot of people, but Tuesday night, I think seems to be as open and effective as any Monday night as well.
My impression.
Yeah.
Anyway. So not hearing, I guess, with anybody having, you know, that being a deal breaker or an issue with that, I would say, you know, if we want to go ahead and have a motion to go ahead and recommend city council that we move the monthly meeting to the second Tuesday of each month, I would entertain a motion for that.
Well, I'd suggest that because we don't have everybody here, you know, at the meeting, that we say everybody here is fine with it, but we solicit members' input from those that aren't here as well to make sure they're okay with it, that they don't have a major conflict. And if that's the case, we go ahead and make the recommendation.
Well, I think that's fine too, Dave. I mean, we are just in October. We can push this to next month and talk about it some more.
The only one that would be Ernest.
Or you guys have gotten feedback. I know we were asked for it, sent it in. Maybe a motion, it would look like a move to do so, subject to everybody being unanimous. Because I think there's only one or two members, three members, I think, if they haven't been heard from before.
And the only person this would actually affect would be Ernesto, because Joshua Ives is finishing his final term at the end of this year. So you could state the motion, you know, subject to getting approval from Ernesto.
Can we get an approval from the city council tomorrow on something that's uncertain today?
So let me just throw this out there. I'd move that we move meetings till Tuesday, subject to Ernesto being affirmative in it. And if he's not able to, I'd waive it.
Is that good? All right, so stated, then I will entertain a motion with those words. All right, Commissioner Uterman, do we have a second?
I second.
Commissioner Downs, any further discussion? All right, let's roll call. And Commissioner Weinveen, yay or nay?
Yay.
Commissioner Branch?
Yay.
Commissioner Downs?
Yep.
Uterman?
Yay.
Keyport?
Yay.
Aggressive.
Yay.
Commissioner Roan, yes. And so motion carries. And so we will recommend to the city council to move the park board meetings pending final approval of Ernesto to the second Tuesday of each month going forward. And motion carries. That moves us on to discussion items number 8 here on our list. And 8A is an update on the Arts Consortium at the community center.
Yes, so I believe it was, my months are running together, but I think it was last month where we had provided the update about a potential partnership with the Arts Consortium, and we had heard from the president of their board, Cindy Anderson, about you know, some background about their organization and the things that they do as a consortium. And so we're still continue to have those conversations. I was hoping we would be in a position to bring some agreements to the park board this month, but it's taking a little longer. So we're probably going to have to push that out till next month. And really what we're looking at is it'll likely be 2 separate agreements. I think we need one agreement that speaks to the dedicated space that they would be utilizing in the cafeteria for their retail operation, along with the dedicated space of the art gallery and where they would exhibit art and what that looks like. And then I think we need a separate agreement that speaks to the partnership and the variety of programming opportunities that we have, utilizing spaces not only at the community center, but here in this facility or out in the parks or wherever it may be. So we're pretty close to finalizing those drafts. And then from there, I need some time for our city administration to review it and likely even get some legal review. And then obviously having some dialogue with the consortium too. So all that still needs to happen before we bring it back to the park board. And so, as you know, I had emailed you last week. There was an article that went into the Herald that sort of insinuated that they've already got a home at the community center. And so while it's exciting to think about that possibility, unfortunately, that article got published without any city staff speaking to it. So I don't want to point fingers or anything. I think it's all good intent. I think everybody's just excited about the possibility. And there was a little bit of confusion because we did make some amends with the Arts Consortium to sort of fill in this short-term gap from them needing to get out of their lease agreement over in Victoria. And so we have allowed them to put up artwork in our art gallery. I saw that really as nothing different than us working with any other artists that would put things up in our gallery per our normal schedule. And then we did allow them to start bringing some of their items over and putting them in that cafeteria area. We really aren't using it right now anyways. Due to COVID, it was pretty much gated off. But they are going to be setting up a holiday market that would occur after the elections. We need some of the space in the sunroom for the election on November 3rd. But after that, we're looking at essentially a rental for them to be able to host their holiday market in our facility. But again, that's just a short-term rental. In terms of the long-term idea of dedicated space in that cafeteria, and then that partnership on programming, we really got to follow the process and have the agreements in place. So that's what we'll continue to work on and bring to the park board once we have those agreements prepared, and then obviously seek your recommendation, and it would need to go to the city council for their approval as well. So, but with that, I encourage you, if you get a chance, stop on over to the community center, art gallery, theater area. It kind of came to life again, which is nice to see. It was a lot of white walls while we've been closed for a while. So it's exciting to see artwork up on the walls. And I think it showcases the talent of the artists right here in Carver County. So any questions, thoughts on that?
Have you been working on the financials with them on how the whole thing is going to work?
That's something I'm still working more on my end in proposing. I think we're going to propose what we think that financial should look like. Then I'll have conversation with our city administrator as well. And then from there, we'll take it back to the Arts Consortium for discussion. Yep.
If it's of help to throw it out there, I know whenever you're dealing with rev share items or leaseholds, it might not be the expertise of the park director. But we operated a number of leases at malls in my business past. And some of the sticking points to get ironed out early were hours, who's going to staff it, so there's a level of reliance, and then marketing assets exchanged, because nobody wants to see this fail. Everybody wants to see it succeed. And so one of the things that was always a sticking point when we operated in a mall was there was minimal hours that needed to be staffed for it to make sure there was a level of reliability. And then another thing was a number of dollars or assets that were put forth from a marketing perspective. Like the community center can put forth a half a page or a quarter page within, maybe you guys have already discussed this, but then in kind, they'd have to do the same thing on their side. So to avoid a path that doesn't work great and to maybe get it all jammed in there before it comes back, those might be some considerations to include as well.
Thank you.
Any other comments out there on the Arts Consortium update?
Well, Marshall, when do you think you might be able to bring this back to the park board?
I'm really hoping if all goes well, we'd bring it back at our November meeting.
Oh,
But I want to do it right too, and so they've, I think we've got a short-term solution that meets their need, so their holiday market typically goes, up until Christmas. So I think even if it had to go to December, I think that would be okay. But I'm going to do my best to try to bring it back here in November.
What are you thinking would happen with like the concessions that are there right now, the vending machines and stuff like that?
Yeah, so most of those we're just relocating to other places throughout the facility. I think there's only like one or two of them where we're just having the vendor come and pick them up. We didn't have space to relocate every single one of them, but the majority of them were able to.
All right, excellent. Any other comments out there? I know the Herald article, I think, kind of got the cart out in front of the horse a little bit and made us have to, react to that situation. But I think by and large, there's a lot of enthusiasm for the possibilities here going forward. And so we hope that you are all able to come up with an agreement that, works for the consortium and for the city. So hopefully we'll be talking about this next month.
Yeah. And the Herald did, if you see on their Facebook page, their online version of the article.
They'd revised it, hadn't they?
They revised the online version. And then it's my understanding, I think next week's print will probably have revisions in it as well. So main thing we just wanted to get, make the point that, we want to make sure we're following the process and ensuring that the city council's ultimately making that decision. So.
All right, excellent. Thanks, Marshall.
I have one quick side question. I'm sorry. Do you know what their current agreement is in Victoria? Is it like a base rent and percentage or a revenue share thing, or just not the specifics, but just the construct of it?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure theirs was more of a base rent and it was scaled over time. Okay. So they allowed them to kind of ease into it, and then it escalated over time.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Yep. All right.
Good. That's good. All right. So with that, we're going to go ahead and move on to discussion item 8B, which is the bike-friendly community update.
Yeah. So last week, Thursday, we reconvened the bicycle-friendly community committee over Zoom. And so it was really good to get that group of people back together. We hadn't met officially, I think, since last February. Like a lot of things, once COVID hit, some other priorities took place. And so we put a pause on that. But it was nice to reconvene the group. Generally it was, that was the primary goal, was just to get the group back together and talk about biking again. And I was able to share some of the bike related things that have happened since the last time we met, which I know I've updated all of you throughout, but the fact that we've got the new Hawks Ridge mountain bike trails. We installed a bike fix-it station over at McKnight Park that was donated to us from Shields over in Eden Prairie. Part of our Chaska Cares and Police Department initiative was we were able to deliver, I think, about 60 bikes for free to people that needed them throughout our community. And then as of recently, a couple weeks ago, 2-3 weeks ago, we held a Cycle Chaska community event. So there still are some bike things happening. And, I think looking ahead, what I was forecasting as kind of our next project was really around the fact that in talking with Pat Stieg with Carver County Health and their ability to utilize SHIP funding and carry that over or continue to use it for us to be able to do a master pedestrian and bicycle plan for the city of Chaska. For a city this size, it's estimated and working with a consultant, that's probably typically $30,000 to $35,000 project to hire a consultant and go through that process. So that's pretty significant to be able to utilize those SHIP dollars and do that project. But I really see working with a consultant who has experience developing these types of plans for other cities to really, utilize this bicycle friendly community committee as a primary stakeholder group. But then also pulling in other city staff as needed, and then doing some other community engagement to establish this plan. And I think this plan, and we had talked about this last Thursday, should really incorporate the elements that are part of becoming a designated bicycle friendly community. And so with that, there's the 5 E's that get talked about that we need to continue to kind of enhance and improve on within our city. And so those are, see if I can remember them all: education, enforcement, encouragement, engineering, and equity. And so those are really the fundamental things that get evaluated as part of the application process into the League of American Bicyclists. So that's the national league that ultimately scores and evaluates the applications as to whether or not we can become a designated bicycle friendly community. So I think those elements we should be factoring in as part of that master plan, which then gives us a framework and a guide to work from over the coming years. And then the other thing I think we could get started on is working with Kevin Wright in getting more content on our webpage. And so that's another exciting update actually is Kevin recently rolled out a new webpage for the city. It's got an entirely new look. So if you get a chance, check that out. But a lot of our parks and recreation content and then community center content is now on the city of Chaska's platform. Previously, the city or the community center website was on a whole separate platform. And so one of the thoughts we talked about was utilizing that Cycle Chaska as sort of our tagline for this initiative, and creating a web page where we can start centralizing a lot of our bicycle friendly community information in one spot. So I see that as some projects for that group to continue to work on into the future. And then we'll have to make the determination as to when we actually submit our application into the league. There's 2 times of year where we can submit those applications. I believe it's August or February of a given year. And so I think as we get closer, we'll reach out and continue to work with Bike MN, which is the Minnesota Alliance that does a lot of this work for other communities. And I think they can really give us some good feedback as to whether or not they think we're in a good position to receive that designation. Yeah, it's good to, I think, get that momentum back again.
You know, it's amazing you got as much accomplished on that project this year as you did, since everything has kind of gone off the rails, you know, in 2020. But, you know, be getting some traction back on that project. And of course, it pushes back our dates for so much that we had wanted to accomplish in this. But kind of feels good, doesn't it, to kind of start to feel some momentum heading back in the right direction.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause I think our goal was to submit this coming February.
Right.
You know, and so I think for sure we're going to be at least delayed to submit, you know, next August, I think is something we can look at, but we'll kind of assess it when we get there.
Open this up to any questions or comments on the bike-friendly community.
Talked about the $35,000 consulting cost. Do you get any feel that your peers or peer cities like Carver and Victoria and Chanhassen might have interest in partnering on that phase of it? Because if Chaska takes the lead, I can just see a number of years down. It's like, well, man, I wish we would have been part of that. And then we got to connect into what they're doing, et cetera. Massive growth will stop in Chaska in 20 years. Carver and Victoria will do so. Have you sensed anybody at your peer level that would have interest in maybe even sharing the cost of that consultant? So the incremental cost of adding a city may be minimal, but we could limit our dollars and maximize the exposure.
Yeah, I know Pat has reached out to those other cities, and you know, I think everybody's timelines may be a little bit different, but you know, that's probably a good suggestion to go back to Pat, you know, as we get closer to pulling the trigger on this and sending out the RFQs to see if there's any other interest. You know, but I think at the very least, you know, in working with the consultant, we want to be mindful of our bordering communities, and, you know, whatever our plan's looking like is lining up at least with those bordering trails and connecting into those other communities for sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Zach mentioned earlier with regard to the Grace Lake project about the school utilization, you know, moving schools from point A to point B. That might be a facet to consider. And then the last one is, I know Southwest Transit's doing considerable amount of work on that last mile. Drop somebody off at a bus barn, get them to their place of employment or get them to their school.
Yep.
So just throwing those things out. I don't want to make it so complex that we can't push it through. But if there's somebody that's like, yeah, let's do it, and it's 1 or 2 phone calls away, it might be worth it.
Yeah, and I think those are like those different stakeholders that we want to make sure we're getting feedback from as we're developing that plan.
Yeah.
You know, and we actually do have representation from Southwest Transit on the bicycle friendly committee, which is good. I think the school one's an important one too. We do have community ed representation, but I'd like to see us get some more school representation out there. And, you know, there's a lot of energy around safe routes to school. I mean, there's a whole separate organization just on safe routes to school. And those oftentimes are even plans in of their own, you know, that cities will work on with schools to get into that level of detail. Yep. So those are really good points.
You know, there is another committee that is called the Eastern Carver County Trail Linking Committee, which Marshall and I both participate in that. So there is a lot of communication between the neighboring cities about making those trail connections. And so it's not like there's a complete disconnect of all that going out there. So maybe that could be somewhat of a bridge going forward to having it potential for those other communities to participate as well. All right, so without any other conversation, anybody have anything else on the bike-friendly community? All right, hearing none, we're going to move on to item 8C, which is the Trail of Fun.
All right, I'm going to share my screen again. Try to use as many props as I can so you don't have to keep staring at me. And show off some of the talent of our department. So happy to share with you. We do have a community event planned coming up for Halloween. We're calling it the Trail of Fun. It's going to be on Friday, October 23rd. Obviously, due to COVID, it's a very different look and feel than our typical Halloween event that we have out at Athletic Park that normally attracts thousands. But kudos to staff for, thinking outside the box and coming up with, another option for us to at least celebrate Halloween. So this is going to occur out at Chaska Community Park, starting at 4:00. And essentially there's staggered time blocks in which people need to register for. Every half an hour. And so we're allowing 40 to 50 people per time block. And when they arrive, we're going to have spaces staked out on the grass for their family units to keep proper distance. And then those families kind of one at a time will go on the trail. And essentially it's a circular route. And so everybody can stay spread out. And then there'll be a variety of different community organizations and some city departments along the trail, providing some fun activities for the kids and their families throughout. So we estimate it'll take about 30 to 40 minutes for the families to go around that full trail loop. So the good news is it's already sold out.
Awesome.
I sort of anticipated that because, like our city administrator will say, to these little kids, this is like high school graduation, and I do think a lot of people are maybe concerned about traditional trick-or-treating going up to people's houses. And so I think this is another example of how utilizing parks to do some of these things and the benefit of these parks and trails to be able to pull off community events is great. So we're hoping for some good weather and looking forward to seeing all the kiddos out in their costumes.
Sounds awesome. Can consider adding extra days.
You need volunteers or anybody to pull it off yet?
You know what? I will check with the event planner, Tessa, to see if there's any need for volunteers. And if there is, I'll send that out to the park board if you guys have an interest in that. Yep.
All right, any questions or comments on the Trail of Fun? All right, looks like everybody is okay with that. So we're just going to go ahead and move on to discussion item 8D, which is the 2021 Park Board Chair. And so this is just an FYI for everybody here on the commission that at the end of this calendar year, I will be done on the commission. And so I'll be off. And as part of the usual process, every year there needs to be a nomination and vote process for both the chair and the vice chair for the Parks Commission. And so this is basically just a bulletin heads up that if those of you that currently are on the commission have an interest in serving in either of those capacities, that you will need to be nominated, and you can nominate yourself. And then there would be discussion and a vote to decide who it is that's going to take on those roles starting in January.
Yep.
Would it be January or February?
Ideally January.
January.
Yep. So we would hold the discussion and the vote at our December meeting.
Okay.
So then we get your recommendation, and then that would go to city council, either at their second meeting in December or their first one in January,
Okay.
for them to approve it. And then that, whoever that is, then is the acting chair then at the January meeting.
Right, but our nominations and election will not be in November, but in December?
December. Yep.
December. Okay,
Yep.
so next month is basically
We're just giving everybody plenty of time to think about this, so.
hold it over. All right. Start your campaign, get your signs.
It's gonna help you.
Another reminder at our November meeting, so.
All right. So that is, anybody have any questions or comments on the 2021 Park Board chair, vice chair? All right, hearing none out there, we'll go ahead and close out of discussion items. And that moves us on to agenda item 9, other business, and 9A being board reports.
Round table.
Oh, that's our round table. Okay. We didn't call it a round table here. And so with that, let's go ahead and we'll start it out. And I'm just going to go down the list here for everybody to comment on whatever's on their mind since our last meeting. And so Elizabeth Weinbeam, we're going to start with you.
Since last month, I attended the Cycle Chaska, which was back on September 26th, the Saturday, and was there with my family and just wanted to say what a great event it was. And the weather held out this year. I think everyone who was able to get in their rides, despite it being a little wet in the morning. I think typically it's been an event that gets rained out or has a lot of rain during it. And I was really impressed with the bike path that we took from kind of Lions Park and then all the way down towards the government center and ended up at Athletic Park. It was freshly paved, really smooth, and the fall colors were out. It was just a really enjoyable time.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Weinbeam. So Commissioner Branch.
Nothing for me. Thank you.
Sorry.
I didn't understand it. Kind of say again.
Nothing from him.
He said nothing.
You said
Yeah, nothing. He doesn't have anything.
All right. So Commissioner Downs.
I don't have anything more. Thanks.
Okay. Commissioner Uterman.
Scouts were alive and well tonight at Lions Park. It's fun to see that. They'll future pickleball players of Chaska. I thought that was great to see them all down there. Flag football at McKnight Park. There was kids there 2 weekends ago. We don't have a kid that plays, but there was a spotting of a former park board member, Sean Olson. You might also see some of his signs around town, so a little call out to him. After he got done with park board, he's now pursuing school board, so I wanted to throw that out there. I was up at Moore's Hammer area, and I've seen them clearing a lot of dirt up that way, so I see that project is being accelerated. I don't know how much is going to get done before snowfall, but I did have one question from somebody tonight at Scouts. What was the resolve of the park? And I guess I didn't know where to point them to. So if you can just guide me to where I can. I know the initial plan was there was going to be parks, then there was going to be an expansion of Moore's Park, and then there wasn't, and then now everything's being moved from a dirt standpoint. So where can I point people to if they have questions about what the final plan was for the Moore's Hammer area?
So that would have, I'd have to look back to see the specific city council meeting, but it'd be part of the final approval.
Yep. We'll have like a master
submittal.
Yep. Okay.
Yep. But, you know, it did not include expansion of the existing Morris Park. So it did get decided that in lieu of that, the city would receive park dedication. And again, the primary reasoning was because they're putting in their own park amenities as part of their project. So,
Thank you.
yep.
All right, thanks, Matt. And so Commissioner Keyport.
Sorry, forgot to unmute. Like Elizabeth, I participated in the bike Chaska on the 26th, 28th. And yeah, on the 20-mile route, and actually not anything I participated in before. And it was great because I met some other people who are equally or more so passionate about biking. And so it was really, it was an enjoyable event. Enjoyed that a lot. Thank you for arranging that.
All right, thanks, Georgianne. And then Commissioner Sarasik.
I don't have anything this week.
All right, and that takes it back to me. And so I guess I'd like to comment and congratulate Erin Link on the success of her cycle Chaska event. And it was a lot of fun. And I was able to ride with Marshall and with Bob Lincoln, who is also one of our chaperones on the ride. And enjoyed riding with you, Georgianne, your husband, Dan. That was fun, you know, spending some time with you guys out there. So just all in all, it was a good event. And I think that I expect that it's going to grow in its popularity going forward. And so that was a lot of fun. So that is pretty much all I had. And so that brings us to item number 10, which is to adjourn with our next board meeting scheduled for Monday, November 9th. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. You just want to stay here all night?
Motion to adjourn?
Thank you, Zach. All right, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, where that, was that from you, Elizabeth?
That was keyboard.
Keyboard. All right, thanks, Georgianne. You're in the box score. And any further discussion? Hearing none, I'm going to go ahead and go through the roll call here. Aye or nay? Commissioner Weinveen.
Aye.
All right, Commissioner Branch.
Aye.
Commissioner Downs.
Aye.
Commissioner Uderman.
Aye.
Commissioner.
Hi.
All right, Commissioner Sarasik.
Aye.
All right, and I move that we adjourn as well. And so with that, we are adjourned. Thank you very much for attending.
All right, thanks, Dave. See you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
Night.
Gavel is high tech.
Night.
You like my gavel?
Again.